Good morning, I'm Karen Blannard, Assistant Superintendent at Indian River School District. So when I think about the Delaware teacher growth and support system, I think as a district, one of our greatest successes was the ability to really hit the ground running early on with our administrators. So last summer, we had the good fortune of training with our administrators, so we calibrated together. And we really were able to take a deep dive and look at the rubric and really look at the elements of effective instruction. So not only did we examine those elements, but we also were able to look at video clips together and really kind of analyze lesson effectiveness. So we watched the video clips, and then afterwards we had the opportunity to really calibrate together. So we used the claim evidence impact question process, which is part of the pilot. And so when you look at the claim, you're really looking at the teacher moves. What are those teacher behaviors that are happening in the classroom? When you look at evidence, you're really kind of examining what are the students learning and doing in that space based on the teacher moves. And then the impact is all around how did that benefit students? So what were they able to do as a result of the teacher moves? And then the question piece is really that reflective piece for the teacher. So based on this observation, what are some of your reflections based on the evidence that we collected, and what do you see as some of your next steps moving forward in this process of delivering highly effective Tier 1 instruction? So I think the benefit too as a district was that we spent time with administrators early on, we calibrated together, and then we also aligned our efforts. And so a big piece was this alignment idea around Tier 1 instruction. So coming back from the pandemic, we knew students had some interrupted learning. We wanted to focus on standards-based, high-quality instruction every single day. And so we made that our focal point. We aligned that with DTGSS so that there was a very clear focus. And then we even aligned our principal and AP leadership goals with their P-cells, which are their leadership standards, to really center on conducting classroom visits and providing high-quality feedback for teachers. And then during our monthly leadership development meetings, we were able to really take a deep dive with administrators, examine components in the rubric, really build capacity of our leadership team with district office and our school leaders. And then they were able to take some of that information through professional development and turnkey it with their staff to build their capacity with this process. When I reflect on what the teachers appreciated most about the system, I think it was this shift from evaluation and rating to professional growth and feedback and support. And so I think early on, our administrators did a really great job of saying to teachers, we're in this together. We're in a learning space with the whole goal of school improvement. So how do we work together as a team to really improve teaching and learning for our students? And so through the conversations with classroom visits and use of the rubric, teachers were able to kind of think deeply about their practices and have space to reflect without worrying about a rating being assigned at that point in time, making it more about their own reflections and what they see as next steps in their classroom. So I think early on, communicating the why behind the evaluation system and explaining that this really is about building capacity across the district for highly effective teaching and learning and growing from each other in that space. And so I do feel that teachers understood that we were learning and growing together to benefit students. When I think about what administrators saw as most beneficial in the system, I think it was the calibration. And so, early on we did the professional development, we calibrated, but then what we decided to do as a district was get out into schools once a month. We took the superintendent's leadership team and we visited classrooms with our principals and APs in the school. We went in, we utilized the rubric together, and when we came out, we used it as our own professional learning time. And so each of us took some quiet reflection time to think about claim, evidence, impact question. What would be the feedback we would provide to teachers based on what we saw, and where would we anchor ourselves in the rubric? And I have to say, early on, it was a little daunting for administrators sitting in that space with their leadership, district office leadership, doing this together. But I think what happened over time was we found ourselves ending up in the same place in the rubric where we wanted to provide feedback, and we were building confidence of all of us along the way to be able to be consistent in how we provide feedback to teachers. So what does that look and sound like, and how do we help them self-reflect on the process? So I think initially it was a little daunting for our administrators, but if you were to ask them, I think they would say that over time, it built their confidence and our ability to be more consistent as a district with how we provide high quality feedback to our teachers. When I reflect on what administrators appreciated most about the new growth and support model, I really believe it was the time we were able to spend together in the summer learning this process and building capacity. So, we know instructional leadership is critically important, and being able to spend time together and debrief on lesson effectiveness, it really kind of made it the focal point for our district. I think the other benefit was alignment. So we knew we wanted to focus on Tier 1 instruction. We knew we wanted principal goals to center on that with their P cells, their leadership goals. And we also knew that we wanted our school success plans to really focus on this. And so we were able to connect everything we did with the new growth system to be able to support our leaders. In our monthly leadership development sessions, the focus was really on unpacking Tier 1 instruction, and we even had the opportunity to think about what was the data we saw when we visited schools in our learning walks, and where do we need to center our efforts as a district. And so we were even able to kind of identify areas to build teacher capacity, and then with our administrators, we developed some PD modules that they could then turnkey with their staff in order to build capacity. So I think spending the time together up front to learn the system and build the confidence of our administrators allowed them to keep the focus in their school building on instruction and the quality of feedback that they were providing. So when I think about the biggest challenge for our administrators, it's always time. So principals and assistant principals handle a myriad of responsibilities in the school day, and it's sometimes really difficult to carve out time to make instructional leadership a priority. And so they had to get really strategic this year because we had folks that were out due to COVID, due to quarantine, but what they did was they calibrated their schedules so that when a principal was out conducting learning walks, that time was valuable for that person to stay the course while other administrators maybe handled some of the day-to-day operations. And so I think the benefit was having that administrative team think about how do we calendar this, make this a priority, and really commit to this idea of everyday instructional leadership where we're spending a good bulk of time in classrooms giving this high quality feedback to our teachers. So it's not easy. There are challenges that show up every day, but making that concentrated effort as an administrative team, I think really helped them to keep the focus on providing this feedback. So when I reflect on the biggest lessons learned, I think there's 3 points that come to mind. Number one is communication. I think it was critically important to communicate the why behind the teacher growth and support system with our staff. We had to develop this growth mindset that this process is all about getting better every day in our practices and learning and growing from each other. And I can't stress that enough. It's got to be a collaborative environment where people feel comfortable taking risks to improve their teaching practices. So I think communication's huge. The other piece that I think was really important was the calibration. The time we spent together looking at video clips, analyzing lessons, building our confidence as instructional leaders to be able to provide high quality feedback to our teachers. And that took a lot of time, but it was time well spent, and I can't stress enough the value in doing this, not only with the superintendent's leadership team, but with our principals and our assistant principals, so that we were all really focusing in on how we provide that high quality feedback. And then I think the last component is the alignment. As a district, you have competing interests, so you have to really think about what is our big focus for the year and how do we connect everything to that so it doesn't feel like we're moving in a million different directions, but we've been very clear about our focus. And for us as a district, it was Tier 1 instruction. What does that look like, knowing that every day what happens in classrooms makes the most difference for our students? And so keeping that at the center of all of our professional development with teachers, all of our professional development with our principals, really helped us to have a clear focal point that we all anchored into to improve our teaching practices. As a district, if we could start over, what would we do differently? I firmly believe we probably should have spent a little more time with our teachers up front. So we did a good job of explaining the why behind the new system, how it would benefit teachers and students, but what we didn't do was spend enough time with teachers really looking at the rubric and unpacking it with them. And I think the best way to do that is through video clips or lesson studies where we can come together with teachers, show them highly effective practices, and then talk about how do they build that into their planning for daily instruction. So in hindsight, I wish we spent more time on that, and that is going to be a really big focal point for us moving forward in year 2. And the other thing that we really want to do is kind of get teachers into one another's classrooms, because the power of that lesson study process is really about creating this culture of continuous improvement and learning and growing together. And the other thing that we're eager to do is when we conduct our end of the year evaluations and collect data on how we did within components of the rubric, even though it's a no-fault year, that's really good data for us as a district to say, okay, we're really strong in these areas, and here are a few areas for continued growth and professional development. We can take that data, work with our instructional coaches, our DOI team, our school principals and APs to really develop some high quality PD so that we are looking at areas where we need to build teacher capacity and being very strategic around how we do that.